Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by Disney executives. Why go with quality when you can have quantity? Let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Amaya. Looking forward to the past. I have no idea. I forgot to write the actual caption for that, so I just made a bunch of words up.
Perfect way to start it.
This whole thing is just off the rails already, and that's probably for the best because I have no idea. Welcome to The Pestle. I'm Wes.
And I'm confused. I'm Todd.
And this is a movie podcast where we analyze, break down films and analyze them to kind of see what they're made of and get better as filmmakers, as writers, and maybe as cinema lovers. We are right now on lockdown. This is our first recording in the coronavirus quarantine. So if everything feels off, it is 1,000% off. We are recording remotely. How you doing, man?
Holding it down, man. You know, trying to do all the things. You know, everybody says you got to learn a new skill. I'm jump roping. Okay, so because I was really annoyed that I was a better jump roper when I was in 6th grade than I am as a 40-year-old man. So, and my sister-in-law's boyfriend can do like 200 double unders in a row, and I was really mad. I'm like, I can't even jump rope, you know, normal for 30 straight seconds. So I got a speed rope and I'm working on it. So yeah, good.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah, double unders are about the worst thing ever.
Yeah, you've done a lot of jump roping, right? You can do double unders, right?
Yeah, I can do them. I generally avoided them. I was focused more on just the old up and down.
The old up and down. Yeah, and well, what was funny was that, you know, I got to a point where I could, you know, without screwing up. It's not obviously I have the conditioning to do more than 30 seconds in a row. I just didn't have the timing down, right? And then I hand it to my wife and she does like the crossover. She did a crossover like first thing. Like, oh my gosh.
That's amazing.
I'm so behind on this. Anyway, yeah, you know, learning how to do, you know, homeschooling and stuff, and juggling that with, you know, working from home and trying to keep things kind of like somewhat resembling to normal for the children, and hell, for us, is sometimes a daily struggle. Other times it's kind of we make it fun. So, what about you, man?
Dude, yeah, no, same here, man. You know what's funny is this isn't too different from my normal life. I'm a pretty big homebody.
I was gonna say,
like, to my shame, I guess. But I didn't realize the only things I really in my day-to-day life leave the house for are going to the gym, going to the store, to the movies, and your house. Assuming I don't have like a date or something.
Made the list.
I didn't realize how much those few things added up. Like, once I can no longer go to the gym or go to the grocery store or, you know, go see a movie or go to your house, like that suddenly was like, oh, I do feel a little more caged than before. Right now I have a gym kind of set up on my patio that I work out, you know, for an hour and a half a day. If my neighbor isn't outside smoking, like there's nothing better than being in the middle of a set and, you know, you get this nice waft of tobacco to choke you out.
Oh yeah.
Not great. But yeah, it's been that, and I've definitely tried to dive into some shows. What have you been watching, movies or TV or like the 30-second version of it?
30-second version. Well, like the rest of the world, I've watched Tiger King, and started watching Ozark, the new season of Ozarks, which yeah, but not honestly. Not a ton. I've been throwing myself back into music a lot and writing a lot more, and that's just been really enjoyable. So I have resisted going to the screen to movies. Also, it's just different, man. I'm sorry to everybody who loves Netflix, and I do too. I subscribe and everything, and that's great. But I gotta be honest, it is not the movies. And I miss that so much. It just is never going to be replaced for me. So I resist the whole throwing myself into watching a ton of shit. I just don't, it feels like a waste of time for me, because if I'm going to watch a film, I want it to feel special because of all the work people put into it and everything. And so like, for example, Pixar had a new movie that they dropped. It was supposed to go into theaters, right? But because of COVID and everything, and all the theaters shut down, instead they released it on Disney Plus onward. Um, and so I won't tell you what I think of it, but I'm sitting there and we're watching it, obviously, because we subscribe to Disney Plus, and I need something to do with my kids, and that is a perfect thing. But I'm sitting here thinking, this took them 4 or 5 years to make, and now they're just throwing it on Disney Plus. Like, here, you binge it. It just felt a little cheat. I was cheating them, but they did it. Like they wanted to give it away. Okay, fine, great, but like, it just didn't feel right.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
like
that's my 4-minute 30-second thing spiel.
Yeah, I mean it does kind of cheapen the effort and the art that was put into it to not be able to see it the way it was created to be. And I know that any theatrical run, no matter what it is always effervescent. But having that moment, seeing it on the marquee, and having that full experience you can't replicate it in your home as much as, like you. I very much appreciate Netflix and streaming and the instantaneous ability to watch whatever I want or whatever. But yeah, there's something much more magical and meaningful to a theater experience. I can remember far more theater experiences than I can at home experiences, and that's because it's an event. For me though, I've been watching a little bit of everything. I ran through Devs, and
Oh yes,
I went back and rewatched The Newsroom, which, if you don't have HBO, it's free right now, and that would be one of the first things I would say, watch that. It's Aaron Sorkin. It's, if you ever watched West Wing, it's like the West Wing but in a newsroom, and the performances are all amazing, and the writing is amazing, and it's very easy. I know HBO has this kind of rep for being challenging content. The Wire, right, is hard for a lot of people to get through, but still one of the best show. It's the best show ever created. If you can, just give it time. It's a slow burn. Whereas The Newsroom, it's very easy. You'll get it, within the first 5 minutes, you'll be hooked. So I rewatched that, and I did it in like 3 days. I did like a season a day, man. I was just crushing it. And then when it ends, you get that, empty feeling. I'm sure there's some great Scandinavian word for that feeling you get after you watch a show and it's ended. I got that.
Yeah. Did you go back and watch it because of Alison Pill?
Probably. Yeah, I would imagine that's linked. I think I was just I needed comfort, and being around that group of people is very comforting, and I love that they're all fighting for truth, even though I have all kinds of opinions about, the writing behind it. But I still love all the relationships and how they're all, in it together. And I felt like that social aspect was what I was really aiming for.
Yeah.
And the zippiness. Aaron Sorkin writes the zippiest dialogue. You would have to go to Amy. Oh God, I'm going to totally miss her name. Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or Gilmore Girls. I'm completely botching that amazing writer's name right now. But to find someone that can compete with Aaron Sorkin, you'd have to go, in that direction, because he just writes some of the best, zippiest back and forth dialogue that does everything you want dialogue to do: reveal character and make you laugh, make you think, and gives you a nugget that he's going to wait for, 10 minutes before he throws it back at you. Like, oh man, that loop paid off. There was a loop there. It wasn't just a random thing. And so all these, go watch The Newsroom, go watch The Outsider, and Silicon Valley. Like, go sign up for HBO while you can, because it's free right now, and there's just so many great shows that are running through right now.
Awesome.
But yeah, what are we gonna do today, man?
So today we're gonna cover Little Women. Yeah, spoiler alert. So we are doing Little Women today, covering Little Women today. So if you haven't seen it, please pause this, go watch it. You can rent it at plenty of different places online right now. I think it's like $4 to rent. But I mean, they've redone this movie so many times. I bet a lot of you have seen it, but if you haven't, we don't want to spoil anything for you. So, and there are spoilers. So, please pause it and go watch it.
Definitely. We'll talk about a lot of things. We'll talk about cinematography, touch on a little bit of the editing, and can't help but talk about the story and the writing and other such stuff and things and stuff.
So a quick synopsis of the film. Jo March reflects back and forth on her life, telling the beloved story of the March sisters, 4 young women, each determined to live life on her own terms. Directed by Greta Gerwig, written by Greta Gerwig, based on the novel by Louisa May Alcott, cinematography by Yorick Saux, and featuring Saoirse Ronan as Jo March, Emma Watson as Meg, Florence Pugh as Amy, Eliza Scanlen as Beth, Laura Dern as Marmee, Timothee Chalamet as Laurie, Bob Odenkirk as Father, Chris Cooper as Mr. Laurence, and Meryl Streep as Aunt March.
What is it?
I don't know. I've always been quite content with my family. Don't understand it. Perhaps I was too quick in turning him down. Laurie.
Do you love it?
If he asked me again, I think I would say yes. Do you think he'll ask me again?
But do you love him?
I care more to be loved. I want to be loved.
That is not the same as loving.
I know. You know, I just feel like women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it. But I'm so lonely.
It's a good scene. God.
That's basically the movie.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah.
Really, right? Yeah.
What did you think? Like,
Good soundbite there.
you saw this in theater, right?
I did. So I saw it with my wife, actually. It was. She's so funny. I try to drag her out to the movies all the time, and pre-Corona, or not pre-Corona, and rarely does she come. She just it's not her style, always. But then sometimes she gets these crazy moments where like she has to go see a movie. In this case, we did a double feature. We saw this and Parasite in the same night at 2 different theaters. It was like legit. And I was so glad that I saw it with her because I think I enjoyed it a lot more. I mean, I have a sister, but she's got 2, and her being a woman as well. So it's different when you're a woman and you have a sister, I feel like, than when you're a man and you have a sister. And it's obviously totally different if you have a brother or if you are a boy and have a brother, or are a girl and have a brother. So seeing it with her and knowing her sister and knowing how they are together, it just made it that much more enjoyable. So like I felt like I was more emotive. Like I was more sad when I should have been sad. I was laughing harder than I would have had I been sitting there alone, because she was laughing, and that made me think of her and her sister. And her and her sister, it's like a very special relationship. Her sister had drug problems for a long time and finally like got clean like several years ago. And there was a point where we thought she was going to die. Like it was like a very, poignant with this, not exactly obviously in all the scenarios, but so it was very it was it was the right way to see this movie. Honestly, it was with her, uh, and I just loved it. I loved it for so many reasons. One, I didn't expect to. I was like not excited to see it. I wasn't like okay, we get to see Little Women. I was like, I'm gonna go see a movie with my wife, and that makes me happy. And it turned out to be such a pleasant surprise. I enjoyed it. It was my favorite part of the night, honestly, and uh, um, it. Yeah, I guess we could talk about all the things that we're going to talk about the movie, and I can weigh in on what I thought about those aspects. But the being next to her, seeing it made it that much more enjoyable. So it was fantastic. I thought that the rehash of it was really great. And Greta, man, like my wife is writing her memoir right now, and I told her when that needs to be made into a movie, you got to find a way to get Greta to make it. And which is funny because Greta went to Barnard, which is where my wife went to school, and they graduated at the same time. So, or they went to school at the same time there. So they don't know each other, but they went to the same school. So, yeah, she did an excellent job rehashing it. So
That's so funny because in a similar way, I was both super super excited and not excited about this movie because the era does nothing for me. This whole bonnet era, whenever this is, the 1850s or whenever, I can't even place a date on it. Is how disconnected I am from this era. But my mom, growing up, loved this stuff. She loved Anne of Green Gables and probably Little Women. I don't know. But all these old classic Disney films that took place in this era, Old Yeller, all those kinds of things. I can't stand it. I don't like Jane Austen films. Normally, I think there's one that I finally, after years, was able to actually sit through the entire thing. Normally, I don't abandon movies. I don't abandon anything once I begin a project. And for me, a book or a movie is a project that, hell or high water, I'm going to finish it because I started it. And these are the only kinds of movies I've ever abandoned. And I just can't stand them. Everything about this era is completely unromantic to me. And from the styling, the wardrobe, the way people treat each other, I don't know, the architecture, like all of it is just completely drabbed me. But what made me really excited about this movie was that it was Greta Gerwig and that cast is incredible. Like I'm so excited about Florence Pugh. She is incredible. The few projects I've got to see her in so far, anything she pops up in, I'm like super excited about it. And I've been on the Saoirse Ronan game, for a long time since she made Hannah. I've been watching for her, and of course, Emma Watson's incredible, which I thought this was a really crazy role for her to take because it's such a backseat kind of role. She has her storyline, but it doesn't feel as pronounced as the other, definitely not as pronounced as Amy and Joe. But even I think Beth had a more, compelling storyline. But I thought it was really cool that Emma Watson still took this role, even though she wouldn't necessarily be, front and center and a major player. She still added, I don't know, a ton to the family, to the elements. And it's one of those old sayings, everyone has a part to play. And so that cast, I was like, yeah, I got to see this. And if Greta Gerwig's doing it, she's going to do it in her own way. And I thought she did such an incredible job because this was my favorite movie of last year for sure. And seeing how she still kept true to it. I haven't read the book or seen any other film. The extent of my knowledge about Little Women comes from that Friends episode where Rachel and Joey exchange books and she makes them read Little Women. That's the absolute extent of my knowledge about Little Women walking into this.
Love it.
But I could feel that she stayed very true to the era, and she didn't try to insert her modern day, I don't know, affectations into this era. Like she still stayed very true to that era and those characters. And I think I got the feeling that she, in a lot of ways, stayed even more true to it than maybe the original work was. Like that final scene, whenever she's negotiating her book contract, I'm going to read this book, but I would be surprised if that whole scene is in the book. I felt like
Definitely not.
right,
Yeah.
like that felt like, hey, I'm trying to send a message on how to negotiate, because women get the raw end of the stick, so often, and that's certainly one area that you can take into your hands and do more with. And she was like, I'm not going to let a man talk down to a woman. I'm going to show that in a George Lucas way, right? You own your property, you own your rights, and that gives you the most power of all. And so that whole scene, so I felt like that throughout the film. And just from listening to her interview, I'll link this interview she did on Script Notes, and it's an amazing interview that she just discusses adapting that novel and how she went about it and her thought process. And I don't want to trample any of her thoughts on there because she's amazing. But you could see that she put a lot of thought in ways that you don't assume that about the character if you've listened or read or seen other versions of this. Like the impression I got was Amy is traditionally a little bit more selfish and self-serving and I don't know, silly and trivial. But certainly throughout the film, you get really great glimpses into her depth and the way she sees the world and how she fits into the world. That it's very three-dimensional, So yeah, I was just floored by this film. All of it. I would say I identified certainly with Joe as an artist that's like going for it, doing your thing, and then you're just sometimes feeling like you're out there by yourself. Like that's, yeah. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with staying true to, and for her, it's for a different reason. Like her goals were more feminist goals of, I don't want to succumb to the idea that I belong to someone else and that all I'm fit for is, marriage and rearing children. Like she wanted to be true to her vision for life and for women at large. But she still was honest about the crushing loneliness about that. And so obviously I don't identify with the place of a woman in society. That's something I'm a man, right? There's nothing I can do to identify with that on that level, but I can certainly identify with it on the level of an artist who doesn't want to not pursue my passion and what I really believe in and what I really love, as easy as it would be sometimes to say, okay, I'm just going to tone it back and become a little bit easier on that level. Like it can be lonely and it can be trying, and I love seeing that representation on the screen. I don't think I've ever seen that before, and yeah, amazing.
Well, and not just all of those things, but believable. Like you can see those things on a screen, or like like that can try to be portrayed even in the same way, but making it believable. That's obviously you have to have good actors for that, but you also have to have a good director who knows how, like, what this is going to feel like in an edit, because it's not just did we even capture it in a performance. It's like, well, if you also captured 30 other performances that day, knowing, nope, that's the one, and because that's gonna mesh really well with the one we did 2 weeks ago that's right before this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you just have to have that like vision, and I feel like Greta completely brought that to the table in this regard. I mean, any great director can take something that's been done 5 times and do it in the same way, but still feel different. And I feel like she did a great job in that. Nolan's another one who can do that. Like he could take something that's been done 4 or 5 different times and make it feel like you've never seen it before, even though you have.
Totally.
And so, yeah, I totally agree.
No, and I absolutely, and the fact is she reimagined this in a way and showed it off in a way that hasn't been, to my knowledge, been done before, with the flashing back and forward. Like this story is told linearly, from what I understand, and to the point where our friend Alyssa and I have talked about this a few times, and she's like, I don't understand how you were able to follow everything so easily. And I was like, yeah, it all made complete sense to me. I knew exactly when I was in present day and when I was in the past, and how those things were interacting. And in some ways, and I'll certainly get to this in the story and writing section here in a second, but yeah, it felt like a cheat code. Like, we get to see their growth and their contrast so much cleaner and easier whenever you can see. And this is something that I feel like a lot of TV shows do. They'll flash back to something that's relevant to the moment they're going to right now, as opposed to seeing something develop over the course of 2 hours, 2 hours and 15. And then you have to trust the audience for them to remember that, oh yeah, an hour ago they said this thing, or this thing happened, and it's relevant right now. And it's a lot nicer whenever you can just kind of cut to and sandwich those things right together, and suddenly the point is right there on its face.
Yeah, and it also means that you have to pay attention. I think that the first time that you kind of realize, oh, this shit is not going to be handed to me as a viewer, you start to really like say, okay, now, I can't look away. Like, I got to pick my moment to go use the restroom if I got to pee. You know what I'm saying? I can't just go anytime because I might miss something. So, and I love movies like that. I can't stand it. We've talked about this 100 times on this podcast. I cannot stand it being spoon-fed plot lines, especially in script, right? I mean, maybe you can get away with it, just by showing me something, but even then it feels so forced and heavy-handed that you lose me immediately. And I know you're the same way.
Absolutely. No, it's really nice whenever you feel like you have time to think for yourself. You have time to ask questions and to ask where the depth is, or why did this character do this thing, or who's going to end up with, Laurie? Is he going to break this girl's heart? And it's like, oh no, the thing I didn't see coming is exactly, the thing that happens. And if you don't ever have time to wonder, because watching this film, they're not very heavy-handed with how Amy feels about Laurie. Like, it's never said out loud. It's never said out loud. But it's all in looks, and it's all in the way she acts whenever he's around. It's all in the edit and in the performance, and not on the, it's all subtextual. And that's what makes it so good. I have a moment to think, is there a connection here? Is there a thing? Because you don't really know until Laurie is making this comment that Amy should not be with Fred. And that's when she gets upset with him. She's like, you can't do that to me. And then all these questions that we've had, all these feelings as someone who's not familiar with the story, starts to come up like, oh my God, I knew it. I knew, that she was feeling something. And you only get that satisfaction because it's never stated. It's never said out loud. It's only through implications. It's all subtextual. And I love that we have that kind of moment to think for ourselves and to suspect and to have that satisfaction of being right, or the surprise of being wrong. Like, those are both really great feelings as an audience member, for sure.
Yeah. Well, very well put.
Nice. You want to jump into cinematography stuff?
Yeah, man. Let's get right into it. Let's do it.
So I think one of the things that made it so easy for me to see whenever we're in the past or in the present or in the future, if you will, is the color grade itself was very, very simple. The future is very cool. It's blue and there's a lot of window lighting and it's somber. And of course this is reflective of adulthood. It's cold, it's trying. It's not as life affirming as the past is, which in the flashback sequences, it's very yellow. It's warm. Even in the winter, it's very warm. And it felt like there was a lot of indoor lighting with the lamp lights, and that helped to add that natural, glow to it. And they're young and it's safe. Your childhood is usually a very safe time, and they're all together, and there's a lot of life in that. But what I thought was really cool is at the end, when we're all in the present, and we're in the school and the school's opening, it's warm again. And it's like we found our way through the trials into something warm and safe again. And that's purely done through color, and mostly done through color. But I also like that they fill the frame when they're all together. In the past, you can feel them together because the frame is constantly packed out with them. Even whenever you're looking at a close-up, I feel like you're still getting a lot of foreground movement and background movement of the characters around them. So you're always feeling them together. And that's a very easy, it's just kind of crammed in there. And that's a very easy way to remind you that this is the past because they're all together. And in the future, they're all on their own, having their own life and their own story as they've grown up. And it's nice because it adds so much life. And in the future, maybe there's a little more empty canvas to show that they're missing their family. They're missing their sisterhood. And so there's a lot more empty frame that you don't necessarily get as much of in the past. The editing, this was a tricky one. This is why I said we're just going to touch on it, because I feel like most of the editing is done in the writing, right? The flash forwards and flashbacks and when to do those things and when to tell that story. Those are normally things that you could experiment with in post, but here it was all embedded into the script itself. And so for me, it's a little bit harder to pick out the great editing. But one of the things that just pop right out at me, and probably most people, is the race downstairs whenever Beth is really sick. And this happens at 2 points in the film, or it happens once in the film, but they kind of sandwich them together again. And the first time that it happens, that she races downstairs to see, if she's okay, I love it. It's very quick. There's all these quick cuts, these quick inserts of her footsteps on the stairs and the rail and her hand on the banister. There's a lot of excitement and there's hope. There's a lot of life in the edit, which leads to more life in the reveal that Beth is feeling better. And so you feel that life affirmation. The second time, it's very slow. It's a slow walk. The edit's a very slow pace. And of course, that's when we find out that Beth is gone, that she didn't make it. And so it's all revealed right there. It's embedded in the edit, in the style of the edit, in the pacing, in the rhythm. The expectation is there. And of course, that would be a really cruel way to rip the rug out from someone, is to add all this life into the edit and then have it be bad news. That would be a sucker punch. And, for certain films that might make sense, but obviously not in this case. We want it to be really reflective of expectations being met in both cases, in some ways. As far as story and writing, man, at the very beginning, he lays it out. Whenever we begin and end in that publisher's office. And this is all about a woman being able to make her way in the world and determine her own future and her own career and provide for her and her family. And she takes her story to the publisher, and he reads it, and he just carves it up. And she's like, if my friend, right, she doesn't even have the confidence to say this is my work. And that's one of the reveals of her growth, her arcs, is the ability to own her work and to confidently not only acknowledge that this is my work, but that she's demanding equal pay and equal rights to the work itself, and ownership. But in the beginning, right, she asks him, if my friend has more stories that are better than this. It's not like she always throughout the film is just kind of putting herself down. She's like, if my friend has something better than this, would you be interested in that? And he's like, yeah, but if the main character is a girl, just make sure that she's married or dead by the end. It's like, holy crap. If that doesn't pretty much spell it out.
Yeah, that's the romanticism of that period for
right.
you.
That's
that
right.
You were saying.
Ugh, not for me. It's hardcore. But I love, going back to what we were talking about a second ago, the flashing back and forward shows a really great contrast in their growth. We see Joe reject Laurie. And then immediately, right, whenever he's proposing to her and she's just burying him, like that guy gets crushed. Yeah. And then we see, which I love that it's foreshadowed. You're foreshadowing the past through the non-linear storytelling here. You foreshadow this earlier in the film whenever Amy is talking to Laurie and she's like, I'm really sorry about what happened with Joe.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And you're like, what? What happened with Joe?
Yeah.
What?
And we don't get that payoff for an hour and a half later. And it's great. And then, but in the edit and the reveal, we see that butted up right up against that monologue that we go from seeing her, destroy Laurie and to I'm just so lonely. I would take them. I would say yes right now if I could have it to do over again. And that's such a great contrast and an easy way to see how she's grown or changed, not just as a woman in this world, but as a character who's learning what her line is. And I love that her mom is right there to challenge her, and she's saying, "That's not real love. You're."
Yeah. Well, I'll save what I was going to say for the story portion because I want to talk about that. Anyway, yeah, no, well, I want to agree with you, honestly, on the cinematography aspect. I feel like it was basically told through the directing, right? Which harkens back to what I was saying earlier about having a good director who really knows the story, who knows exactly what she wants to capture and in what way. And that's more than just knowing, what's in the frame. It's a combination of what's in the frame and what came before that frame, what's coming after that frame, and the feeling that's coming through that frame, right? So she can't just be behind the monitor seeing what's being captured and saying, yeah, that's it, because that was a good take. Honestly, they could have done 20 takes of the same thing, right? And 10 of them could have been better than the one that was picked. But that one that was picked was the right one because of what came before it and what's coming after it too. What she knows is going to be before it and be after it in the final edit. And I feel like this was shot in a way that was. She literally could have shot this if she knew how to run the camera. Is what I'm trying to get at, right? There wasn't anything super special. It's not like we're watching 1917 here. It's all very intentional.
Yeah.
Which kind of like puts you at ease a little bit as a viewer. I feel like, you go watch 1917, you were never at ease. And that there's a reason for that. And in this, I'm not really expecting super fast cuts and everything, so that when they do happen, like in the stare moment or whatever, they feel a lot more intentional. They feel like something's happening. Oh my gosh. Or when they slow down, it feels intentional as well. But I think also it's probably this is a period piece, and a lot of period pieces are edited in similar ways, where it's just like, okay, now this person's talking, we're seeing this person. Now this person's talking, we're seeing this person. And maybe you'll have like some J cuts in there or something, but for the most part, it's like very straightforward, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And in this case, they did a great job of sometimes how someone's reacting is more important than what someone else is saying. Like a piece of information could be trivial, but seeing how someone reacts to a name being mentioned or a moment having happened can be so much more revealing of character and desire and intention, that you definitely pick up on stronger than just like you're talking about having it straight. Oh, this person, no, this person, and we got our coverage and we're out. Like there was so much more intentionality that was focused on character revelation than just simply let's get our coverage and go. And
agreed.
Going back into like the flashing back and forward, I shows really great contrast, especially with Amy. Like I love that in this edit, in this version of it, the non-linear version, we get to see that Amy sees Laurie first. In this film, Amy sees Laurie first. And that helps to build, because this could be a really upsetting film if you're rooting for Joe and Laurie to get together. If that's what you really, really want, then, this can be a bit of a downer. But whenever you get to reorganize it in a way that shows Amy is setting up some intention with Laurie first, then you don't feel quite as bad, or you don't feel quite as let down, even though there is still a little bit of that, and I'll get to that in a second. But I love seeing Amy's growth contrasted so cleanly, and that's certainly one of the cases where we get to see them connect before we ever see Joe and Laurie together. I also love maybe my favorite moment in the film, if I can have like 20, is when Amy apologizes to Joe for burning her book. That is like the world's worst apology ever. The essence, the core of her argument of her apology is that she really, really wanted to hurt Joe. you understand why I had to burn it, because that was the only way to really hurt you, and I really wanted that. It's the worst apology, and it's so adorable, and it's so immature.
And yet it's the most honest.
Absolutely critically honest. Like,
Yeah.
Amy's not a liar. That's a really interesting point, because she's a very honest person, even if it's
Her fault.
yeah, it's cruel. But I love watching her grow, even in her performance. Florence Pugh, which for me, I could not take my eyes off of Florence Pugh. She completely stole the show. In her mannerisms, like, we can watch her posture change, her speech, her thoughts, the perspective, all matures, or at least becomes more front of mind, as she, changes from the little girl to the woman who's responsible for her family. And even that moment of whenever that moment happens in her life, we see a really clean cut right there. It's a beautiful choice in terms of storytelling, because she's sitting down with her Aunt March as a young woman, and we hear how Aunt March is saying that it's on you now for you to handle this and take up the reins and provide for your family. You got to find someone to marry that's going to take care of your family. That's on you. And Amy's kind of taking this in. She's like, okay, can I go finish painting now? And she stands up. She walks out the door. We cut to whenever 5 years into the future, and we immediately see her walking back into the room to talk to Aunt March and tell her that I rejected Fred. So the piece of advice, the thing that she was told that she has to do, is juxtaposed immediately against the thing that she rejects. And she's saying, that's not what I want for my life. I want something else. I want someone who isn't as wealthy, but someone that I've always loved. And that's at the heart. That's her stakes. And it's such a great storytelling decision to put those moments right up against each other. And it's really cool, because it's a 360-degree thing that happens, in the sense that we see her walk off to the left and exit out one side, and then in the next edit she's walking right back around. It's like she literally makes a complete U-turn. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna go do that. Nope, I don't want to do that. I'm gonna decide my life for me now, and not just live it based on what my Aunt March, my rich Aunt March, wants me to do. Freaking amazing. Not just in cinematography and storytelling, but certainly in performance, because she has to show us that she's a new person. If you watch her gait, just the way she walks and holds herself, it is completely, in that 20 seconds, you can see both of those things completely change and mature. Her posture, it's all just freaking magic. And to your point a minute ago, everyone has to hold that in their head. Amy has to, Florence Pugh has to hold that in her head, that this is my character evolving right now. And Greta Gerwig has to make sure that it's executed. And to your point, like, sometimes the better take doesn't necessarily mean the take that's best for the film. Sometimes you have to choose, one thing over another in order to tell the story as best as possible. But I also love, we see her grow, right, whenever she sits down to comfort Joe whenever Joe cuts her hair. Like, that's a maturing moment. And having her say, and it's hilarious, because she's like, I would never have done that. You're one, and she gives these backhanded compliments. You're talking about, like, she's honest. Like, yeah, like when Joe cuts her hair, she's like, you're one good feature.
It's so good. It's so good. Like, even in those moments where you're like in pain for them, or for at least one of them, you're still laughing. Like, they're just so funny, because they get at each other. They just know those little things, buttons to push, or like, ways to get at you, right? Or to get at one of them, right? It's so good. I wanted to also just circle back just for a second, because I know we need to move on, but circle back on that. I love that scene that you brought up of her walking off and then walking right back on. I feel like there's some kind of meaning about why that, one, it's a cool trick, right? Like, just visually in the movie, because nothing is really, because it's not told linearly, you can do cool things like that, right? And that's awesome. but also I feel like there's some kind of message behind that. Maybe it felt to me a little bit like a changing of the guard almost, not just for her character, but for society, right? I feel like, as over the last, say it 100 years, each kind of generation, kind of gets a little bit looser, a little bit more, like now these people have rights. Now those people have rights, right? You just kind of like African Americans can vote. Now women can vote. Okay. So we're progressively going to everybody. Maybe one day everybody will be equal. Who knows, right? If we live long enough, maybe. But that's what I feel like has been. It's kind of like that felt like the message to me of grandma is saying you got to get married and to a rich man, and I'm saying I'm stronger than that. I don't need that. I don't want yeah, money's great, but that's not what I want for my life. And I'm a strong woman, and so I'm going to do what I want to do. And so I do, because it's my life now. This is my world that we're living in. Your world is gone. Now this is my world, and my world is going to have my painting and my art in it, and the man I love in it, and whatever else comes with that, right? That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah. Well said.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just say things.
But going just a little bit broader here, I guess, we get to see everyone as a whole, like every character, how they fit into the family, and then we also get to see them as individuals throughout the film. They all have their own lives and their own storylines, whether it's great or small, and it's the story of family in and of itself. Like, you can know me, like Todd, you know me really well, probably better than almost anybody. And if you saw me around my family, suddenly it would be like, I don't know this person. Like, I don't really understand who I'm seeing right now. Like, it would make sense to you on a certain degree, to a certain level, but there's still something that my family knows about me. And like you were saying a second ago, they all know how to push the buttons. Like, they can push the exact spot that's just going to make me detonate. And I'm like, nobody can do that like family. And it's great because that comes through really well in the film. Like, you see how much they mean to each other. Especially, I love that sequence where Amy falls through the ice. And it's after she's burned the book and Joe is just obviously fuming. And you can feel her hoping that she would fall through the ice as she, glided away on her skates. Like, she just got that note from Laurie saying, hey, stay around the edges. It's going to be too soft in the center to skate on. And she immediately looks back at Amy, doesn't say anything, like the anger, falls through the ice. And there's this great, I didn't see it until this last time. I was watching it yesterday. Whenever she's recovering, she's on the ice, and you can see Joe is kissing her. And it's very sweet, and you're like, wow, she's really turned around in the last 30 seconds. Like,
yeah, right. I don't care that much about the book.
No, it's gone, but you can't replace my sister. And I love that. I love that you get to see that's real family. That really shines through, and all the performances, all the editing decisions, everything. Like, Greta Gerwig is, for someone that hasn't made a lot of movies, is a freaking master craftsman. And it's astounding. But also, one last note that I made on whenever last time I saw it in theater and made my notes. I love that whenever that Christmas morning, whenever they go to give their Christmas breakfast to the poor family, the one that I believe ends up costing Beth her life in one sense. I love that as they're on their way there with all this food, they pass by a church. I love that. There's this, to me, very subtle meaning that God is in the actions. God isn't in the church. God is in the people and what they're doing. And that's, if as a kid, my mom had said, you want to give up your Christmas presents for I promise you, I was just a selfish little bastard before the age of 13. I was just the worst. And there was absolutely zero chance of that happening. In fact, I used to make sure that if there was a toy that I liked that someone else was getting, I would get that toy instead. Like, I was a little shit. and so seeing them, giving and saying that, I think they used their dad as the bait. The mom used the dad as the bait. And they were like, are you going to say that that's what dad would want? Yep. That's exactly what I'm going to say.
And that's what a
okay.
child does. And that's what both of my children do, and that's okay, as children. But then, and that's maybe the point, when you grow up, it's not the way it should be anymore. But I absolutely noticed that moment, and I loved that moment. It was just like this little, it was, how the girls poke at each other. It was Greta's little way of poking maybe at religion, right? In general, it doesn't have to be Christianity specifically, even though it looked like a Christian church. Definitely was a Christian church. But just some way of like saying, okay, you can go to this box and you can pray, or you can actually do something that's going to help another human being. And, I don't say that as someone who just goes out and helps everybody all the time. I'm not, preaching to the choir here. I'm just saying, there's a difference between being religious and acting it. And in that scene they were showing the difference.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's perfect. Yeah. Loved it.
And I mean, just to let the agnostic here throw out a verse, and like James, he says faith without deeds is dead. Like if you're only saying you're good and that you love God or whatever your pathos is, like, and you're not doing anything with it, then what does it really matter? But as far as storytelling and writing, like my last note was kind of a question. I don't know, to you, to me, to everybody maybe. But in the end, does everyone kind of settle? Like, I think to some degree, everyone does. To some degree, maybe. Like, Amy is with the person she really wants to be with, but it's probably not the exact way that she wanted to be with him. Like, I think the perfect way would be if he rejected Joe in favor of Amy, right? That's what you really want in the love of your life, is for them to choose you, not to be rejected and then get, take you as a second place offering. And similarly, Laurie, really wanted Joe, and the way he talks about Amy is not quite sad, but it's on the path, when he says that, I'll always love you, and I love Amy, just I love her differently. And it's like, I don't really know what that means, man, but I hope that you're good to her at the end of the day, and I hope she's good to you, and that y'all make something great together. And I've obviously to some degree, I already forgotten her name, Meg has to settle a little bit. Like, she ended up with someone she loves, and she loves her family, but you can clearly see some disappointment in her lifestyle. And so there's compromises all around. But I love that at the end, Greta Gerwig found a way to have her cake and eat it too. When it came to Joe, she got to see us. She got to see Joe get together and have love and the excitement of love. And she also got to see her reject love, and, focus on career and put her own, ideals ahead of her passions, or at least her family desires. Like, she got to have those both, because in the book that Joe wrote, she ends up with, this guy, but in reality, she didn't. I think in reality, she rejected that. I don't think Joe ends up with that guy. I think
you don't.
No, I think Joe ends up, and I think that's the significance of the final shot where Joe is holding the book. Because if you remember, the opening scene is her walking into the publisher's office, and now this is her finally being published and holding on to the thing that she truly loves, which is writing. She loves nothing more than writing, and I think she chose writing over family.
Huh.
But,
Interesting.
But Greta got to have her cake and eat it too. She got to show this character getting with a guy. She's married, and now she also got to show her being on her own. I love it.
Interesting. I could see that.
Because
I don't agree, but I could see it.
Because whenever she's describing it, she's talking about, and I think this is the cleverness of the edit, is she's in the publisher's office, and the publisher asks her, why doesn't she end up with the guy? And she's like, because that's not what happened. That isn't
right.
That isn't real life.
But who's the guy?
Huh?
Who's the guy?
The guy, the Frenchman, or wherever he was from.
Yeah. Well, I know who you're talking about, but who's the guy that she's talking about in the story to the publisher? Was it Laurie? Could it have been Laurie? Because she wasn't. If the book is kind of a metaphor for the whole story we're seeing, right? Which is kind of how I was seeing it, and I could be wrong. Then Laurie is the guy that she does not end up with, not the Frenchman.
No, I think he was wanting her to end up with anyone, really.
I know,
but that's why they labeled that scene Under the Umbrella, is because the scene that she suddenly was describing was the one that ended up in the book, but not the one that happened in real life. Because that was, the statement before that. She was like, "That's not what happened. That's not real life, and that's not what I want her to be."
Yeah, but true. But the way that I saw that was, that's not real life, meaning that the scene Under the Umbrella didn't happen. That's what didn't happen, not the not ending up with the Frenchman. Now, let me also say that you could totally be right, and that is still a great story. I'm not saying that she needed to be with the Frenchman. Not saying that at all. Maybe he's just hanging out. Maybe he's a teacher there, and they're just like friends and everything. Maybe they are dating and they didn't get married and they just don't, I have no idea. Right. And that's part of the great thing about the ending, is that, like, you see it one way and I see it a totally different way. Cause I do look at it like my first thought when I saw it was, oh, she didn't end up with anybody. And then I was thinking, and that's good, because the whole movie is about her being a strong woman who doesn't need a guy. And so why would she be? But then that also pigeonholes her into not being able to be with anybody, not allowing her to fall in love with somebody, even if it's not Laurie. So in a way, you're right. She does get to have her cake and eat it too, because we're having this conversation and I'm seeing it in one way and you're seeing it in a totally different way. But not allowing her to be just this way of no marriage, no man or woman, whatever, no love, right? Because, like, that seems like a sadder prospect than her not being with Laurie, which the whole movie was leading up to her possibly being with Laurie, right? But it seems like a sadder prospect that she's not, as a character, allowed to be with anybody because she's this person, this woman who is too strong, or strong enough to not need a man. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I disagree that I don't see it as sad. I see it as, just that, strong and maybe uncompromising.
Well, yeah, I think I meant sad as in, like, not being allowed because she's too strong. Does that make sense? As a character, like the writer / director not allowing her to have that because she's too strong.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Not us as a viewer experiencing the story.
Right. No, I get what you're saying then.
It's weird. I don't know.
I think that is interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. I think the amazing thing was she defied, and she set up an issue in the opening scene of the film. Make sure your main character is either married or dead. And at the end of the film, Jo is neither. She's not married,
right?
And she's not dead. And it's okay to just exist.
Yeah.
And because we never get to see that. I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of films where we see a guy end up neither dead nor married, right? And he's fine and he goes about his life. but every movie that has a woman as its, its central protagonist, they always end up, married and with the guy. And it's really badass that she was like, nah, bump all of that. She's gonna just be okay, because while she may not have loved Laurie, I don't know that she was completely, crazy about the Frenchman either. I felt like she was still waiting for the lightning, and she was okay if that never came. Instead, she was going to focus on the school, and I'm going to teach kids, and I'm going to change the world not through having my own kids, but through raising other people's. I can change their minds through that. That's the classic teacher paradigm. And so, I thought it was just a really cool statement as a director to say, you know what? I want a movie out there that doesn't have a freaking woman married and her life is about more than that.
Yeah, totally. I can totally see that too. That's great. Sure. Why not?
All right. All right. So what do you give it?
Oh man, dude, I got to give it a 9.5. I mean, it's absolutely fucking fantastic. The only reason I'm not giving it as 10 is your reason at the top is I don't like the period. I've never liked it either. It's boring. And it takes a Greta Gerwig, and this kind of cast to make it, satiable, I guess, Yeah. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's what I give it. What about you?
Yeah, I'm easily at a 10. It's really difficult for a movie to make me cry. And I'm just like blubbering throughout this entire film. Like, one character looks at another and I'm just in tears. It's absolutely incredible. Storytelling, performances, all of it. And just, I guess, being unfamiliar with this particular story I just felt blindsided. I was like, where did this come from? I could not love this film any more than I do. It's so good.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Love it.
What are you going to recommend this week?
So I was really close to recommending Pride and Prejudice, because that's the only other movie I've been able to watch in this era. It's the only Jane Austen film that I've been able to watch. It's the 2005 one with Keira Knightley. And it's so good. And I was incredibly surprised. And if someone I didn't trust hadn't recommended I watch it, I never would have watched it. That's the one I really want to recommend, but I think there's a cooler one to recommend, which is on HBO. There's a show called Sharp Objects, and it's written by Gillian Flynn, who you may know from Gone Girl. She wrote that, and it's an incredible story. It's got Amy Adams and Eliza Scanlen, who played Beth in Little Women, and if you want more, I don't know, woman power or girl power, whatever you like, that's much more dramatic and the stakes are much more modern. And go watch Sharp Objects on HBO. You will not be disappointed. What about you?
Awesome. It's hard for me. I don't really know anything that kind of compares to this, really. Feel like I want to say some movie that's like, I don't know, either comparative or with a female director, but I just kind of like, I've been wanting to like rewatch this particular movie because I enjoyed it, and it's just kind of like off a little bit, but has a main female character that is kind of that you can't tame, even though you think that you can, which is like very powering, I feel like. And it's totally off base on this. Can you get, if you guess this, you're not going to guess it. You're not. And if you guess it, I'm going to turn this off and run away in fear, because there's no way that you can guess this. You're like in my brain if you can.
Yeah. It's a movie.
It's a movie. It's 7-8 years old, and female main character, but not what you think.
I got nothing. Dang it.
Yeah, you're not going to get it. I don't know why I'm even asking. Because it's nowhere, it's not even in the same wheelhouse. It's totally different. I'm going to recommend Her. it was one of those movies where it just kind of like came out of nowhere. I love anything that Joaquin Phoenix has ever done. The guy is unbelievable. He was unbelievable before he won Best Actor, for decades, and one of my favorite actors. And Scarlett Johansson plays and it was interesting about that is that she wasn't the initial voice. It was someone else who was the initial voice, and then it just wasn't right, and so they went back and cast her for the voice, redid all of it. And I'm so glad that they did. But yeah, her.
That's amazing. Great reco. So stay tuned next week. We're gonna do devs.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad. So I didn't know what this was. You said, have you checked out devs yet? And I didn't have Hulu. Thank you. But I binged the crap out of it. It's
worth watching. You can see it on Hulu right now. It's produced by FX and written and directed by Alex Garland, who you may remember from such small movies as Ex Machina. He wrote and directed that. He adapted and directed Annihilation. He wrote 28 Days Later. He wrote The Beach. He adapted Never Let Me Go. Like, we have done a lot of his movies on this show, and he is easily my favorite writer. And so he wrote and directed Devs. If that's any indication, we'll save. There's so many surprises along the way. Just go watch it and be surprised because Yeah.
And it's really slow moving. So you have to like just stay with it, right? Just stay with it. The whole time is all that we'll say. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe and review us on iTunes. Leave us a note if you'd like us to talk about anything. And we have a new listener. Doggone it, I didn't pull up everything. I'm pretty sure it's Charlie. I forgot to make the notes. I'll give you a proper shout out next week, Charlie. And if you want to comment on this specific episode, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/littlewomen.
So the quote of the day we'll leave you with is from Joan Didion. To free us from the expectations of others, to give us back to ourselves. There lies the great singular power of self-respect. Wow, that's very on the nose for this film too.
Yeah. Like, I don't know enough about Joan Didion to kind of wax poetic about her. I know she's an incredibly famous writer. I just haven't read any of her work, whether it's her novels or her articles. But I know she's very influential. And that quote is just, oh man, self-respect. Yeah. I can't
the
really
word
add
self-respect is like, it's kind of one of those words that you just say and you don't really know what it means. I'm just saying that because this is kind of telling me what it means, reminding me what it means actually, free yourself from the expectations of others. That's like, if I'm making a piece of music, not worrying about if other people like it. If I like it, then just letting it be what it is, right? And being okay with that. Like, that's very freeing. Unbelievable. I mean, you need that as a creator of anything, whether it's film or writing a book or music or whatever that might be in any form. Even parenting. I feel like there's a lot of that in this. There's so many people that say you need a parent like this and your kids need to be reading by this age and walking by that, whatever. That's fantastically freeing quote. That's actually right on the nose for me. It's helping. It helps helping me right now. So good call on that, man.
It's huge. Like, I've been working on this script for a project, for the last few months now. And it's just kind of gone in these loops, and it's been a frustrating and, maybe rewarding process. We'll see, in the end, but I wrote a 30-page script. Client saw it and just completely changed directions on us, and we're like, okay. And so I had to go back and effectively rewrite 30 pages. Like, I think maybe accumulatively 2 or 3 pages made it through.
Wow.
But overall, yeah, it's like that's a pain, man. That's a lot of work that you just kind of balling up and throwing away, and you're like, okay, well, here we go. And the hard part of that is that, for me, I'm very much a once bitten, twice shy kind of person. And so for me to write 30 pages and then basically have it wadded up and thrown back at me, like, I now have to go be vulnerable again. I now have to go find a way to find myself free of the expectations of others, in order to completely invest myself into the script again and to find what is it I want to say, what is it that's honest and true, who are these characters now, and how can I, pour myself into this thing instead of just going paint by numbers, and playing it safe. And how can I figure out how to take risks again after, feeling completely shut down after this first write. And it was challenging, and I had to do what I had to do. It was one of those scenarios where I broke my leg, and then in order to not feel the pain of a broken leg, I broke my finger. I had to break something else. And so I went and threw a bunch of money into the stock market, and I basically just, wadded that up and threw it away. But, but it helped. It helped.
I'm sorry.
No, that's not tender at all.
I was only laughing because you were smiling. That's all.
No, but it was one of those things that I had to find a way to reduce my level of care and investment, emotional investment, to divert my emotions somewhere else. And it helped. It got me through the next draft that got us 90% of the way there. And now we're kind of going through these minor revisions. And it's a thing where they kind of keep changing directions and giving conflicting. If you've ever worked with any client before in your entire life, you already know what I'm describing. People say hey, do one thing, and then they come back the next week and say, why'd you do that thing? Do it this way. Well, all right. What do you, there's a limited amount of, back and forth, I guess. But I completely identify with this. And obviously, like you were saying, this is so well reflected in the movie, especially in Jo. For her, finally, you could feel that she was getting to that place. Because even when she submitted the manuscript, the first chapter, she was like, if there's any value in this, which there probably isn't, then let me know. I could write some more chapters in case you think it can do, in case you think it's any good, which it probably isn't. She just kind of kept just backhanding herself. Right?
Yeah.
Because she was so worried about what someone else might think, instead of saying, I love what this story is and what it can be. And I felt like at the end, at the negotiating table, is when she finally figured it out. No, he's not the gatekeeper anymore. I am. I'm the gatekeeper.
Yeah, and it goes both ways though too. So just to say this, and we can finish it off. It's yes, you have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that what you're doing is good enough. But it's got to be good enough. You can't just be, the first thing you've ever written and you think it's a fucking masterpiece. And if anybody disagrees, then they're incorrect. No, it probably sucks. Let's be honest. And that's okay. That's the whole point, is to suck for a long time so that you never have to suck, that much again. Right. Or your suckiness, when you write something really crappy, it's, 50% better than everyone else's best, So you do have to work really hard at it to make sure that what you're feeling is really good is actually good, So there's that too. But then when you're ready and you think, man, this is good, I've put my time and effort into it, then don't look back. 100%.
Absolutely. The creative process it's a strange and uncaring monster. If something's going to be good, man, to some degree, either you gotta kill your babies, or someone else is gonna do it for you. You have to figure out a way to be completely honest with yourself, or what good is your taste? What does it really matter if you can't? You're not gonna listen to anybody else. If you can't be honest with you, then feedback isn't going to be useful either. You just want people to tell you how good you are. You don't want people to tell you how you can improve, which is generally why I don't ask for feedback, because
I don't want to improve.
I don't want to hear the criticisms. I can already hear them. I can already feel how bad my work is. I don't need voices added to the chorus.
Listen to yourself, Wesley. Listen to yourself.
I have 1,000-piece orchestra playing the worst fucking shit that I got going on.
Come on. You're good at what you do.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
It's closing the gap, right?
Yep, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, man, I had a great time.
Same.
Remember before this, you said, "Oh, this won't take long?"
Yeah.
Of course. Took long. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a great time, and make sure you join us next week where we'll be in our, homes doing this coronavirus thing for a while. But we're still going to be bringing this to you guys. I know we've been gone for a little while, but we figured this out, and we're going to keep bringing it to you as much as we possibly can. Next week, we're going to be doing Devs. Make sure to go watch that. It's a long haul, but it's worth it. So take the time now to watch over this next week. And we'll see you next week. Until then, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.